Hey there, everybody. Welcome to class tonight. I'm so glad that you chose to join us live this evening. Maybe you're not joining us live. Maybe you're watching a little bit later. But I know a lot of you are joining live because we have that opportunity for the Zoom call after this. Be sure to stay tuned to have that time of discussion after the class wraps up here on YouTube and we get to flow in to the Zoom call afterwards. I'm super excited for this Infected series that we're doing. We're calling it Infected. This week is Infected with the Mission. And over the next few weeks, whether we're in quarantine or whether we get to come back with the classroom, even though that's probably doubtful right now, we're going to get to look at this idea of saying, okay, we're infected with either something super positive or something that's maybe a little bit more negative that we can work on. And I'm excited to start this week with Infected with the Mission. Do you guys remember Mario Kart? Maybe you still play Mario Kart. For me, Mario Kart was definitely Mario Kart Wii. That was the one I played. I know a lot of people were like, Mario Kart 64 is the best. Well, I disagree because I liked Mario Kart Wii. That was my game. The graphics were better than Mario Kart 64, and it wasn't too good to make it not fun anymore. I remember, though, and I still do play Mario Kart every once in a while, but maybe you remember this idea of when you're driving along on the street in this race, you can pick up these item boxes. And there's a lot of joy in picking up an item box because you never know what you're going to get. Now, granted, if you play the game a lot, you start to discover that there's a certain percentage based on, what position you're in. You have this percentage to get this item. Like, for example, if you're in first place, you have a 0% chance. The game has said it's a 0% chance for you to get a mushroom, which gives you a speed boost. It's not going to happen. So if you're in first, you're going to get a banana or a green shell. Those are the two highest. Your lowest percentage chance of when you're in first is the 3 bananas, which is always incredibly exciting. If you're in like 6th or 7th, you would have that 7.5% chance of getting a coveted blue shell, which was always great for just ruining your friend's day, right? He's in first, you're like, ha ha ha, or she's in first, and you're like, well, take this, boom, blue shell, and you take away their victory. But the absolute worst thing to get, in my opinion, even worse than a fake item box, was when you were in 4th, 5th, or 6th, and you had that 7.5% chance of getting the storm cloud. Now, most of you know what I'm talking about. For those of you who don't, when you got this storm cloud, you would have a little storm cloud appear above you, and you would be extra fast for an extended amount of time, maybe 10 seconds. And if you didn't bump into somebody to give them that storm cloud, when the storm cloud expired, it would shoot lightning on you, and you would shrink and be significantly slower than everybody else. When you got that storm cloud, it was like you received a mission. But the thing is, it's not a mission that you wanted to have, right? It was a mission to get to sit there and try to pass that storm cloud on to someone else. That's exactly what you were trying to do. It was not a mission you wanted to have to pass that storm cloud on because the end results could often be messy. But when you got it, it was a mission that you had to be on. You had been infected with the storm cloud mission, and nobody else wanted you to fulfill that mission because it meant that they were going to be in trouble. I want you to go ahead and be turning in your Bibles to 1 Kings chapter 19. In 1 Kings 19, we see the prophet Elijah. He's coming off one of the greatest moments in the history of the Bible, a great victory for God, where he's on top of Mount Carmel. If you watch the quiz, you know that we talked a little bit about Mount Carmel, but Elijah's sitting there on top of Mount Carmel, and all these prophets of Baal are sitting there. They're cheering, they're chanting, they're going crazy, trying to get fire to rain from heaven, and Elijah prays a simple prayer, and fire comes down and consumes everything from God, and then Elijah goes and slaughters all these prophets of Baal. And that's what's taking place. And I think that this story that we're about to read that follows up is an incredible, and I'm even going to use the word powerful to mock myself, but I think that there's not a lot of ways to describe it, a powerful story that can give us an incredible example of who we can be as followers of God. We're going to see someone who's on a mission, but not for the reason that they maybe originally intended. So what we're going to do is we're going to do quite a bit of reading today. We're going to start in verse 1, and we're going to go through verse 8 to kind of get the background, and then we're going to kind of finish up a few more verses here that are going to give us the context. I'm going to start reading, though. Starting in verse 1, it says of 1 Kings 19, Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, So may the gods do to me and more also if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by this time tomorrow. Then he was afraid, and he arose and ran for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. I imagine at this moment, Elijah takes off. He understands, hey, I'm about to die. He has to run for his life. He gets to a town. He says, servant, if you stick with me, there's a chance you die. Just stay here in this town. And he's going to keep on going because he knows that Jezebel, this evil queen, wants to kill him. Verse 4, But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a broom tree. And he asked that he might die, saying, It is enough now, O Lord. Take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers. And he lay down and he slept under a broom tree. And behold, an angel touched him and said to him, Arise and eat. And he looked, and behold, there was at his head a cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. He ate and drank and lay down again, and the angel of the Lord came again a second time and touched him and said, Arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you. And he arose and ate and drank and went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the Mount of God. Most scholars also believe Mount Horeb was Mount Sinai, where the Ten Commandments were written, where the people of Israel stopped. This powerful mountain of God, a place where so many spiritual things have taken place for the children of Israel. And Elijah's headed that direction. And it's amazing to see kind of where we are in this moment in this story. Because Elijah's at this point, he has this evil queen chasing him down. She wants to kill him. She's at this point where she's going to go to all ends to make sure that all the prophets of God die. So Elijah's having all his friends that are prophets getting slaughtered, just like he slaughtered all the prophets of Baal. He's lonely right now. He's left his servant, so he has no one with him. He's sitting there feeling alone to no end. He's at a point where he sits there and says, I want to die, God. Let me die. I don't need to be alive right now. But then I think you see God say something interesting. I want us to read I want us to read the next couple verses in verse 9. He says, There he came into a cave and lodged in it. So he goes to this Mount of God, finds a cave, and lodged in it. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him. How cool would this be? And it said to him, What are you doing here, Elijah? He said, I've been very jealous for the Lord of God of hosts. For the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. And I, even I only, am left. And they seek my life to take it away. So here we see Elijah. He's spending time resting. He laid there and the angel fed him. He gets to this mountain and he rests in a cave. And God comes to him and says, Elijah, what are you doing? Like I said before, you can go look at his situation. Jezebel's trying to kill him. He's lonely. He has all these things going against him. And God looks at him and says, bro, why are you here right now? Why are you in this place? What brought you here? Why are you sitting here alone? And he sits here and says, God, look at me. I'm distressed. I'm upset. It's sad, Lord. The people of Israel have forsaken you. They've torn down your altars. They killed your prophets. I'm the only one left, God. That's why I'm here. I've got nothing. I'm lonely. God, right now you're not bringing fire down on those people. Right now they're destroying the things of you. And God's about to show him a side of himself that maybe Elijah forgot existed. Let's read verse 11. And he said, go out and stand on the mount. This is God talking to Elijah, responding to Elijah. And he said, go out and stand on the mount before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind tore the mountains and broke in pieces the rock before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, the sound of a low whisper or a thin silence. And when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face with his cloak and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And behold, there came a voice to him and said, what are you doing here, Elijah? God showed Elijah all these massive things that Elijah knew God was. And God wasn't in any of them. Check out this wind, Elijah. This powerful wind that I know you've seen. By the way, I'm going to take you up in this one day. I'm not in that. Elijah, check out this earthquake. This powerful thing that can destroy entire cities. Yeah, I'm not in that. Elijah, check out this fire. I'm not in that either. Where am I, Elijah? I'm in a whisper. A thin silence. I'm in something very, very small. The same power that flooded the world and that's going to burn it up one day had the same effect with a still, small voice. I've wondered why would God not show Elijah, why would God show Elijah the three big things if he was not in them? Why take the time? I think Elijah was probably expecting God to be in one of those. Through his loneliness, through his time of despair, through feeling rejected, through all the other prophets being killed, Elijah was sitting there, and his mindset most likely was at this point where he was expecting God to do something major. And God looks at Elijah and says, I'm not just those things. Elijah in this moment had been disappointed. All his friends are dead. He's getting destroyed. He's beyond sad. And God said, I know what you need right now. For you to understand what you're doing on this mission, I know what you need. There are a lot of people in this world right now who are sad. There are a lot of people in this world right now who are disappointed. There are a lot of people in this world right now who are lonely. People who have lost their jobs. Those of you who are seniors aren't going to get to do the senior stuff. That hurts. That's sad. So what does a whisper look like right now in our world? Where are those little whispers coming from? We're going to come back to that in a minute. Notice this, God let Elijah be disappointed, but it wasn't a forever disappointment. Because originally God asked this question, and he came to a cave, and this is in verse 9, and the word of the Lord came to him and asked him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Elijah says, God, I'm not doing well. I'm disappointed. God shows him all these things. Elijah sees all these things. And the one that he sees God in is this still, small voice. Notice again, I'm just going to read verse 9. It says, "There he came to a cave and lodged in it." He was ready to stay there. "And behold, the word of the Lord came to him and said, 'What are you doing here, Elijah?' Verse 10, he said, 'I have been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts, for the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. And even I only am left. They seek my life to take it away.'" And in that moment, God said, "Go stand out on the mount." He shows him all that. This is so cool. Verse 13, at the end of 13, God looks at Elijah after Elijah has seen God in the stillness, and he says, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Notice this response. He says, "I have been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts." This is verse 14. "For the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. And even I only am left, and they seek to take my life away." It's the same exact response that he has before. Except this time, notice how the Lord responds. He responds in verse 15 and says, "And the Lord said to him, 'Go, return on your way to the wilderness to Damascus, and when you arrive, you shall anoint Hazael to be king over Syria.'" And we can go through all this, and we can sit here and say, okay, what's the whole point of this? Elijah's in this sad moment. He's lonely. Notice he never forgets his mission. But he sits there and says, "I'm just going to need to hold up for a while." And God says, "Look at my power in the quiet things." And then God looks at him after he shows him his power and says, "Elijah, what are you doing here?" And Elijah says, "I'm stressed out about your mission." And God looks at him and says, "I understand that. You've had time to rest. Go. Go get back on with what you're supposed to be doing." His mission was entirely for God. It never stopped being for God. Through his loneliness, through everything, he only thought about God's people. Elijah wasn't going to let anything stand in the way of his mission. Are we going to let things stand in the way of our mission? Are we infected with the mission in the same way Elijah was? Earlier we said, what does a whisper look like in our world? What does God's power look like in our world right now when it comes in that form of that whisper? Guys, we have the opportunity to be that. We can't sit there and cause rain. We can't sit here and cause earthquakes. We can't sit here and cause winds or fire. But we can be a small voice. We can be gentleness. we're infected with the mission of God. We are a people who are going to be focused on being that small whisper to people around us. Right now, it's not a great time in our world. Right now, it's a sad time in our world. Right now, there are people who are struggling. There are people who are going through what Elijah was going through. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's someone else. But I can tell you this, what you need to be doing right now as a Christian, as a follower of God, is understanding that, hey, the power of God is in small whispers, and God's looking at us and saying, go do this. You've had a lot of weeks to relax. You've had a lot of weeks that are a little bit different. It's time to go. It's time to fulfill our mission to serve God's people. I hope that tonight you can be a person who has the goal of fulfilling God's mission. We'll see you on the Zoom call.